Hello everyone, this is Pooka, and today we're going to be looking at the brand new set XY Flashfire. And I'm going to do a set review of these awesome new cards. We're going to be taking a look at what I feel are the best cards of the set, and we'll also be taking a look at some other interesting ones as well that may not be as good, but they have some effects that are kind of unique, or may be good someday, just not right now. So let's start off by looking at some of the best cards from this set. I would say the number one card that's gotten the most hype from this set is Pyroar. So, Pyroar has the ability Intimidating Mane. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon. It's a stage 1, very easy to get into play, and this ability is going to be very strong, very game-changing, I think. Now, why would this be game-changing? Well, think about most decks nowadays. They revolve around mostly basic Pokemon. And for just a stage 1, you can shut off most decks' offense. Just think about it. Virizion Genesect decks, they don't usually play evolutions. Team Plasma decks, they don't really play evolutions. Like an Yveltal deck, that doesn't play evolutions unless it's paired with Garbodor. That would be the one thing that would get around Pyroar here. But so on and so forth, most decks attack with basic Pokemon. So Pyroar is going to be very useful. Its attack is not bad either. Scorching Fang, 60 for 1 fire, 2 colorless, and then you discard, or you may discard a fire energy to do 30 more damage. So you can do some decent amount of damage, but the big thing here is Intimidating Mane. I mean, if Pyroar gets played enough, this shuts down a lot of decks, or forces them to completely retool their build and force them to start running evolution cards. So Pyroar, whether it's good or not, it's definitely going to have an impact, I think, in the way people approach building decks. So I think this is probably the most, I don't want to say the best card from the set, but the one that's going to change things the most. Now, what do I feel like the best card is from this set? It's kind of strange, but we'll go ahead down here and look at it. I feel like the best card from this set is actually Druddigon. And we'll see, hopefully it loads up here. Alright, there we go. Now, why is this the best card in the set? Well, it has this attack Revenge. We've seen this before on Bouffalant from Black and White or Legendary Treasures. 20 plus 70 if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack during his or her last turn. Now, this is a very standard thing. We've had Bouffalant for a long time. 90 for 2, it's decent, but it doesn't really get the job done against most things nowadays. What's the difference? Well, we have a dragon type. And that means, hey, how many of those decks running Blastoise and Emboar revolve around Black Kyurem EX and Rayquaza EX, which happen to be weak to dragon? So now against those decks, it was always such a problem for a lot of decks. I can't deal with Black Kyurem EX. I can't deal with Rayquaza EX. They just keep knocking out my Pokemon in one hit every turn, and I can't respond to it easily. Now you can. For just one double colorless energy, a Revenge can get a one-hit knockout on Black Kyurem EX and Rayquaza EX. This card is a game changer. And honestly, it might make Blastoise and Emboar decks a lot worse. Any deck can run this card. It's very flexible, just takes 2 colorless energy to attack, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing this, and we see Blastoise and Emboar decks start to fade away after they have been so dominant so far this season. Just thanks to one simple basic Pokemon, Druddigon. So I would say this is the card that's going to have the most impact out of everything. If not Pyroar, then Druddigon. Alright, after that, I really don't think there are too many great Pokemon in this set. One of the ones that's getting a lot of attention, of course, is Charizard EX. The whole focus of this set is Charizard, of course. It's Flashfire. This is probably the one we're going to be seeing the most. It has Wing Attack, 60 for 3, but then it has Combustion Blast, 150 for 2 fire, 2 colorless energy, and you can't use Combustion Blast during your next turn. Now, why would this ever be good? This is so expensive. Well, there's a reason. The 2 fire, 2 colorless is actually very, very important because we also have a new supporter, we'll go down here, called Blacksmith. So you can attach 2 fire energy cards from your discard pile to one of your fire Pokemon. So wow, okay. Now we can use Blacksmith to get 2 additional fire energy into play, and then also attach a double colorless energy card. So potentially on the first turn, we can use this Combustion Blast attack. That's 150 damage on the first turn, and that's pretty darn ridiculous. So Blacksmith and Charizard EX, those are 2 cards that obviously have synergy together, and I definitely think people are going to try it out at the very least. I'm not sure how good it's going to be, but it certainly has a lot of potential. Now, not just Blacksmith, we have more support for fire-type Pokemon in general. Fiery Torch works very well with Blacksmith. It's an item card. You get to discard a fire energy and then draw 2 cards. So you can use a couple Fiery Torches, discard a couple fire energy, and then Blacksmith them right onto a Charizard EX. And there you go. Obviously, this set was heavily tailored towards fire Pokemon. So, no surprise. There is another Charizard EX here. It has the attack Stoke. Flip a coin of heads, search for up to 3 basic energy cards, and attach them to Charizard EX. That's actually a pretty strong attack. And then it has Fire Blast, 120 for 4, and then discard energy. Now, 120 just isn't as good as Combustion Blast. Stoke is a better first attack than the other Charizard EX, but Fire Blast is a much worse attack compared to Combustion Blast. Now, the reason Combustion Blast is better is that we also have a card like Muscle Band in the format, which adds 20 damage to your attacks. So with a Muscle Band, now Combustion Blast can do 170 damage, which can knock out a lot of Pokemon EX. And that's what makes it so good. The game right now is all about one-hit knockouts, and Charizard can get those thanks to Muscle Band. And even Hypnotoxic Laser is a possibility as well. And also against Virizion and Genesect EX, you're getting the fire weakness, so that's even going to hit him harder. But those are probably the best Pokemon in the set. Of course, Charizard also has the Blacksmith support. But there are some good trainers in this set I'd like to look at. The first one I'm going to look at is Lysander. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, but there it is. His effect, it's a supporter. It's basically Pokemon Catcher. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon. Of course, Pokemon Catcher is a coin flip now, but we have a supporter form that does not require the coin flip. So this is probably a much more balanced effect. Still a super, super powerful effect, but it does take up your supporter for the turn. So it's balanced in a way, but the effect is still extremely good. This allows decks to kind of close out games, pick off something on the bench, and I really do think this will see some pretty big play. Anything with a catcher effect is pretty much going to be good, and I think Lysander is no exception, and he even gets a sweet full art card as well. So, hey, at the very least, you can look very cool. And, of course, he does kind of look like a Pyroar, so I guess those two can work together pretty well. Another trainer I want to look at is Startling Megaphone. Of course, we do have Tool Scrapper in the format, but Startling Megaphone is arguably better. It discards all Pokemon tools attached to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So, the reason I'm highlighting this is it effectively destroys tool drop decks. Right, those tool drop decks that have tons of tools in play. Tool Scrapper used to hurt those decks. Startling Megaphone puts some dirt on the grave. This is just game over for tool drop decks. Being able to discard 10 tools at a time is just insurmountable. And you gotta think decks will start playing this instead of Tool Scrapper. There are some exceptions. Some decks might want to use Tool Scrapper since you can discard your own tools with Tool Scrapper. That can come up sometimes, but in general, we'll probably see Startling Megaphone be used pretty often. Next, we have Pokemon Fan Club. So this is a supporter card. It's actually a reprint of an old Pokemon Fan Club card. A little bit different. You search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them into your hand. So we have not had much supporter-based searching card, or pretty much no supporter-based searching cards in the format for a while now. And Pokemon Fan Club finally gives that to us. We've had item-based search, like Ultra Ball, Level Ball, Heavy Ball, even Evo Soda, but Pokemon Fan Club is a supporter card. Let's just get to basic Pokemon. Now, this is worse than Pokemon Collector that we saw a few years back that allowed us to search for 3 basic Pokemon, but 2 is still pretty decent, and I think eventually this will see some play. Right now, I don't think so, because we do have Level Ball and Ultra Ball to search out things, but Pokemon Fan Club, I can see it being good in the future. The difference between this one and the old version, the old one used to force you to bench the Pokemon immediately. This one you can put them into your hand, so a slight improvement. Next up, we have Sacred Ash. Now, right now, Super Rod is probably better, but Super Rod won't be around forever, and when it rotates out, you gotta think Sacred Ash is its replacement. Shuffle 5 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. This is a very powerful recovery card, and in some decks it may even be better than Super Rod. For example, a deck like a Round deck or a Garchomp Altaria kind of deck that uses Stage 2 Pokemon to attack, or maybe even like an Empoleon deck, they would benefit greatly from Sacred Ash, shuffling in 5 Pokemon. That's a lot. So Sacred Ash, I think this is one of the good cards in the set as well. But that's really all of the great cards I think that are in this set. I was fairly underwhelmed by Flashfire. I thought there would be more good cards than there were, but there are a lot of interesting cards we can look at as well. So we'll take a look at those right now. These are cards that may not be the best, but they have intriguing abilities or attacks that make them potentially useful at some point, or they're just kind of cool, I guess. So the first one we're going to look at is Caterpie, and then Metapod. We'll see if we can get both up on here. Alright, here we go. So Caterpie and Metapod. They both have the same ability, Adaptive Evolution. This Pokemon can evolve during your first turn, or the turn you play it. So hey, you just get to evolve right away. You get to go from Caterpie to Metapod, and let's see. Can we get the Butterfree on the screen as well? I don't know if we have enough space, but you can do all of this in one turn. Caterpie, Metapod, Butterfree. Pretty cool. Problem is, Butterfree, not very good. It has the attack Quiver Dance, search for a basic energy attached to this Pokemon, and then heal 40 from this Pokemon. Not very good. And then Gust, 70 for 3. If Butterfree were actually a good Pokemon, this would be awesome. But the reason I point this out is that someday they may actually print a Butterfree that is good, and in that case, this ability will be awesome. But for now, I can't really see these cards doing much. Next, we have Shiftry. It has the ability Leaf Draw. You can discard a grass energy and then draw 3 cards. That's a pretty powerful ability. Drawing 3 cards is actually quite a bit for an ability. And then we have its attack Deranged Dance. 20 times the number of Pokemon on each player's bench. Now that's actually a pretty annoying limiter, only counting benched Pokemon. If it counted active Pokemon as well, I feel like this attack would be very good, and it would be much easier to get one-hit knockouts. But the fact that it only does 20 times the number of benched Pokemon really limits it. That means your opponent can basically control how much damage you're doing. You can always bench 5, so at the very least it'll do 100 damage. But you want to be getting one-hit knockouts when you have to get a Stage 2 Pokemon attacking for 3 energy. And I gotta think most of the time that's just not gonna happen. However, your opponent only would need, 3 benched Pokemon in order to do 160 damage if you have 5 benched Pokemon. So with a Muscle Band or a Silver Bangle, you could start knocking out big EXs in one hit. So I'm actually not sure how good Shiftry is, but the fact that your opponent can control how much damage you do really does make me think it's going to be difficult to use in competitive play. But hey, it's still a very intriguing card, and I wouldn't be surprised if Shiftry started to get some play. Now, the one thing bad about Shiftry is it does have a heavy attack cost, but it does have a pretty sweet partner in Melodic here. So this ability, Energy Grace, is really all we're going to look at. Once during your turn, you may knock out this Pokemon. And then if you do, you take 3 basic energy from your discard pile and attach them to one of your non-EX Pokemon. So there's pretty simple synergy here. Shiftry you use Leaf Draw, discard Grass Energy. Draw 3 cards, get the Grass in the discard. Melodic, you use Energy Grace, take the 3 basic energy out of the discard, attach it to one of your Pokemon. Now, you do have to knock out Melodic to use this, but that's usually worth the price of getting 3 energy in play. This also allows you to take advantage of things like N, where you can disrupt your opponent's hand based on how many prizes they have taken. And we can also use something like a Life Dew to make sure we don't give up a prize here. So there's definitely options to go with this. I actually feel like Melodic will be a card that's very good someday, that'll find a very good combo. I'm not sure if Shiftry is the answer right now, but hey, it's important to note that these cards are out here. Next up, we have Dusk Noir. Seems like pretty much every Dusk Noir has something cool about it. I mean, every Dusk Noir does seem to have some kind of cool ability or something, and this one is no exception. Its ability, Shadow Void, allows you to take a damage counter from one of your Pokemon and move it to this Pokemon. There have been plenty of Pokemon with this kind of ability, or Pokemon power back in the day. And basically, this is a watered-down version of Reuniclus's damage swap, but someday it may be good once Reuniclus rotates out of the format. And its attack, Pain Pellets, is actually not bad either. Put damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon equal to the number of damage counters on Dusk Noir. So it's not a great card, but we could see it have some use someday. I'm just not sure where yet. Next, we have Toxicroak Ix. Now, this is a very interesting card. It has the attack Triple Poison. It poisons your opponent's active Pokemon, but you do 3 damage counters instead of 1. Now, I wish this would do some damage as well. This would really give Toxicroak some real oomph to put behind it. You know, if even it just did 10 damage, that would be cool. You know, you could like do a Muscle Band, and then you do 30, and then 3 from Poison. And then, obviously, you play this with Verbank City Gym to make it actually do 5 damage counters in between turns. But the way it is here, I just don't see it being very useful. If you're going to use a Pokemon EX to attack, you want to be doing more than 5 damage counters. It's usually not that great. And its Psychic weakness is kind of a bummer. It can be knocked out very easily by a Deoxys EX using Helix Force or a Mewtwo EX using X-Ball. So I'm just not sure how good this really is. The Triple Poison is a very neat mechanic, but I don't know if it does enough. And Smash Uppercut is just not a very good attack on a Pokemon EX at all. Next up we have Meowstic. Now this is a card that's currently outclassed by Dusk Noir, but we're going to take a look at it anyway. Its attack, Ear Influence, allows you to rearrange all the damage counters on your opponent's field. So it's basically Dusk Noir's Sinister Hand in the form of an attack. So right now, Meowstic just isn't very good, but someday I could see this being a pretty good card, since Dusk Noir has proven to be so powerful. You never know when moving stuff around on your opponent's field will be good. And hey, this could be a card that ends up, being a closer of some sort, where if you have a ton of damage on your opponent's Pokemon, you can just move them all to one Pokemon, or take big knockouts all at once. So I'm not sure if this will actually be good, but again, it's an interesting mechanic. Speaking of interesting mechanics, we have Love Disc. Now this is one of the weirdest cards I've seen. For 1 energy, you have Heart Wink. Flip a coin if heads. Your opponent can't draw a card at the beginning of his or her next turn? Huh? Yeah, you actually get to stop your opponent from drawing a card. I'm not sure how practical this is in any sort of competitive play, but it does open up some wacky ideas with hand disruption and a heart wink, preventing your opponent from ever doing anything. For example, something like a red card in a Hooligan's Gym and Cast, putting your opponent at 1 card, and then using heart wink to stop them from drawing a card. Who knows? It may work. But I really don't think it will. It's still very, very strange that Heart Wink exists. I don't think we've ever seen anything that prevents your opponent from drawing a card at the start of their turn before. If there is, someone can correct me, but this just seemed like a unique card to point out. Next up, we have Barbaracle. Pretty sweet looking Pokemon. It has the attack Rock Rush. Discard as many fighting energy cards as you like from your hand, and it does 30 times the number of energy cards you discarded. Now this is very difficult to keep using. You have to discard fighting energy every time. Oh my goodness. That's just not very good. But it does have potential to get one-hit knockouts, especially with superior energy retrieval. And it does not have any acceleration. Fighting type does not have any energy acceleration. That's what I don't like about it. But we could use that melodic that we saw before, which can knock itself out and get some energy into play. So if you can find a way to make Barbaracle get one-hit knockouts every turn, it actually may not be that bad. But that's easier said than done. And I don't know, this may just end up on Bad Deck Monday. Who knows? Next up we have Fortress. This has a pretty cool ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve, you can put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. This is very reminiscent of an old Jolteon EX. Had the exact same ability. It's a Poké Power back in the day, which was very good at the time. Nowadays, 1 damage counter just isn't what it used to be. I'm not sure if that's enough. Even with cards like Devolution Spray and Scoop Up Cyclone to keep reusing Fortress or maybe even Cassius, I just don't know if you can do enough damage with this kind of thing to make it worthwhile. You'd have to use it 17 times to knock on an Yveltal EX, so I'm not really sure that this is worth it. But there could be some kind of a spread deck that opens up because of Fortress, and Devolution Spray does exist, so hey, maybe it's worth a shot. I don't know. Sticking with the metal Pokemon, it looks like there's only 2 in this whole set. Durant has Chip Off. Now, this isn't going to be an extremely good card, but just one that could see play someday. Discard cards from your opponent's hand at random until he or she has 4 cards left. This could be good if your opponent just does something like use a Tropical Beach, and then you follow up with a Chip Off. You could discard 3 of those cards at random, possibly hitting something very useful. Can also be good after your opponent uses something like a Chorus for 10 cards or something like that, and you can chip off to discard a bunch of them. Pokemon is a game where if you run out of resources, you lose very quickly. So any kind of discarding is always kind of powerful. So Durant may have an opportunity to be good at some point. It probably won't have enough of an impact to really do anything, but hey, it's cool to see that it exists. Alright, what else interesting do we have? We have this guy, Dragulge. I am not sure how to pronounce that one. I need to look that one up. But this Pokemon has the ability Poison Barrier. Your opponent's poison Pokemon can't retreat. So this ability seems like it can be used at some point in some kind of a lock deck. Potentially with that Toxicroak EX we saw earlier. That might not be bad. But right now, things revolving around status effects just aren't that great. I mean, special conditions are nullified by Virizion EX's Verdant Wind, and you gotta think that's going to be around for a while. So anything involving poison probably won't work for a while, but hey, someday this could be something good. We have this Floette next. It's just a Stage 1 Pokemon, which has a pretty unique ability, honestly. It's a Fairy-type Pokemon, but it is a flower. So it has the ability Flower Veil. Each of your grass Pokemon in play gets plus 20 HP. Huh. So now your Mega Venusaur can get 250 HP with a Floette in play instead of the regular 230. I don't know. Maybe getting extra HP could help some Pokemon, like the Shiftry we had up above. You need benched Pokemon anyway, so maybe Floette could work there. I mean, there's an Umbreon we have currently that gives plus 20 HP to Team Plasma Pokemon. That hasn't really seen play, so I'm not sure if Floette will. But, hey, it's an interesting ability that may end up working out at some point. I don't know. That's kind of what a lot of these cards are. Maybe someday this will be useful. But it's always important to look at those kind of cards in the set. A lot of them do end up being worthless right when the set comes out, and then end up being good eventually. That's just how it goes. Next we have Lopunny. This is probably never going to be good, but it has a funny ability. Big jump. Once during your turn, you can return this Pokemon and all cards attached to it to your hand. So this is very reminiscent of the old jump bluff from Dragons Exalted that had Leave It to the Wind. Allows you to return it back into your hand. There's no real practical application to this. Maybe there would be if it had a lot more HP. If it could survive attacks, for example, and then just big jump back into your hand. That would be cool, but with only 90 HP, you gotta think this Pokemon won't really be that great. And next we have Miltank, one of my favorite Pokemon from the set. Powerful Friends for 1 energy, does 10, plus 70 if you have any Stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. I actually think this is pretty cool. So for 1 energy, if you have a Stage 2 on your bench, you do 80 damage. That's not bad. You know, with a Muscle Band, that's 100 damage, or a Silver Mangle, it's 110 damage, so I could see Miltank actually being decent. For 1 energy, that's actually quite a bit. Now, 100 HP isn't terrible. It does get knocked out by most Pokemon EX, but, I mean, that's not bad. It could survive Darkrai EX's Night Spear, so we have that going for us. I'm not sure if Miltank will ever be that great, but hey, 80 for 1, that's nothing to just gloss over. I may as well look at all of the Pokemon EX from the set as well. We can go ahead and do that. First, we've already looked at the Charizards and the Toxicroak, but we can take a look at Magnezone EX. This does not seem to be a very good card. It does have the attack Dual Bullet, 50 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, but it costs a brutal 3 lightning energy. That's so much. And since we no longer have electric in the format for Dynamotor, 3 lightning is just too much. I can't really see this Pokemon being used. Even if you did power it up, 50 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon just doesn't seem that great. I don't know. I'm not seeing it with Magnezone. We also have Kangaskhan EX. It has the attack Triple Draw 3 cards. This may be good someday. But Kindred Kick just isn't very good. 70 for 3, and then on heads you do 100. That's pretty average at best. Of course, we gotta look at the Mega Evolutions. So of course, we do have Mega Charizards. So we got 2 of these bad boys, the Fire one and the Dragon one, and they have some pretty ridiculous attacks. This one has Crimson Dive, 300 damage, and then do 50 to itself. This has Wild Blaze, 300 damage, and then discard the top 5 cards of your deck. Now, as awesome as 300 damage is, that knocks out everything. The downside is that it costs 5 energy, and it has to Mega Evolve. Mega Evolution is probably the worst mechanic we've seen in a long time, because of this line right here. When one of your Pokemon becomes a Mega Evolution Pokemon, your turn ends. So you lose an entire turn Mega Evolving. And that's just something you really cannot afford. Maybe, just maybe, I could see somebody using one of these in a deck that revolves around Charizard EX. But I don't think we'll ever see the focus of a deck be a Mega Charizard EX. Unless there's some kind of card that bypasses having to end your turn when you Mega Evolve. Crimson Dive is probably better than Wild Blaze, just because we can use Blacksmith to power up this Mega Charizard. I can't really see this one ever being played. Sorry, Dragon-type Charizard. This Mega Charizard EX does have a card that seems to be made for it, though, and that's Protection Cube. Prevent all damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks it uses, so you would not take the 50 damage from Crimson Dive. Still, so expensive, and you have to give up a turn. I just don't feel like Mega Charizard EX will be worth it. But hey, maybe somebody will prove me wrong. Alright, so we do have one more Mega Evolution. Mega Kangaskhan EX. It has Wham Bam Punch. 100 and then flip a coin until you get tails. 30 more damage for each heads. Boy, that's just not very good. I mean, sure, you had the potential to do a lot of damage, but odds are you're going to be doing like 130, maybe 160 if you get lucky. And anything beyond that is just extremely lucky. Yeah, you could use Victini's Victory Star to reflip for it, but that's if you're going to take the time to Mega Evolve your Pokemon, you at least want the attack to be reliable, right? Yeah, I don't really understand. This is probably one of the worst, if not the worst, Mega Evolution we have so far. Another interesting thing to note on the Japanese versions, on the first set we had Mega Venusaur EX and Mega Blastoise EX. They had the English attack names for the Japanese versions, and then the Japanese attack name right here on the English versions. Sorry, just totally blanked out there for a second, but they actually kind of screwed this up. The English attack for Mega Kangaskhan is Wham Bam Punch, and then in the Japanese cards it says Gangnam Punch, I think, and then this is Crimson Dive. And then on the Japanese one, it says Gurren Dive or something like that. So, maybe lost in translation there. Pretty disappointing to see. But oh well. Also, interesting to note, these are the secret rares for this set. Doesn't really look like it. But they have gold borders right here. Just take a look right here. These are the secret rares. You can see 109 out of 106, 107 out of 106. So the Mega Evolutions are the secret rares for this set. The only difference is that they're gold, and you can barely even see it. It's kind of disappointing, to be completely honest. If we go ahead and look at this one, this is just the regular one. Let's see, hold on, can we get both on the screen at once? Drag it down. Alright, so we can see the difference. This one is just a normal card. This one is gold. So be sure if you get one of these, you recognize which one you have. Since this one is the secret rare, it's probably going to be worth a little bit more. Even though they are exactly the same card with exactly the same art besides the gold stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. Oh well. We have a couple more cards to look at. First one I want to look at is Pokemon Center Lady. It's a supporter card, heal 60 damage and remove all special conditions from one of your Pokemon. I feel like this is a card that was a little too late. If we had this last season when Gothitelle Excelgor was out, I think this would have had a time to shine. We could play this supporter and then get out of the paralysis lock. Nowadays, I really don't feel like this is going to be very good. Maybe someday it might. There still is Trevenant Excelgor to worry about. But we have Max Potion, we have Super Potion. I mean, it just doesn't seem like wasting your supporter is worth it. I don't know. Healing cards always seem to pop up, though. So maybe Pokemon Center Lady could be good at some point. We also have Palpad. Shuffle 2 supporter cards from your discard pile into your deck. I would say this will be good in decks with Sableye to Junk Hunt. A lot of those decks just like running N, Professor Juniper, and Random Receiver. And sometimes you can just kind of run out of supporters. But now you have Palpad to shuffle them back in. So this might be a good card to have in those kinds of decks. It's an interesting one at the very least. I mean, I think it'll see some play at some point. Not sure how good it is, but an interesting effect nonetheless. Then we have a stadium card, Magnetic Storm. Each Pokemon in play has no resistance. I gotta say, I can't remember the last time resistance really decided a game for me. So I'm not really sure this will see much play. There are some relevant resistances like Fairy Pokemon resisting Darkness, Yveltal EX resisting Fighting type, stuff like that, but I gotta think Magnetic Storm is just outclassed by things like Burbank City Gym, which would just make Hypnotoxic Laser make up for the lack of resistance anyway, so I don't know. Maybe good someday. What do I know? And then I think the last card I'm going to look at is Trick Shovel. This is definitely a strange card. It's an item card. Look at the top card of either player's deck. You may discard that card or return it to the top of the deck. So this would be good in a deck that's trying to really disrupt your opponent. We've seen decks with, for example, Malamar to try to discard your opponent's hand, and then you can also control what they draw on the following turn. So it might not be bad. Of course, discarding your opponent's cards is also pretty powerful. So I don't know. Trick Shovel, interesting at the very least. And I feel like that's what a lot of this set is. Interesting, but I'm not really sure how good it is. So that is going to be my set review of XY Flashfire. I think I've covered most, if not all, of the interesting cards in this set. Of course, if you think I missed one, let me know down in the comments. I very certainly could have missed one, but there are a lot of interesting Pokemon. Again, I just only see a few being very good in competitive play. Charizard, Pyroar, Druddigon, the trainers. That's about it. But that wraps this up. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.